far from the accusation by Neil Martin and Simon Harris that this was premeditated, this was definitely not premeditated. There was no pre-existing plan to object so strenuously to the order of business. But what became clear was that the government was attempting to push through this absolutely farcical situation that the Michael Lowry group could be effectively in the government, be backbench TDs, having written the programme for government, having ministers in the government, and yet sit in the opposition benches and crucially take from opposition time and opposition resources. And that is simply not acceptable. That is an affront to the basic principles of parliamentary democracy, the role that the opposition is meant to play, and was a blatant political stroke. And I think the government paid the price yesterday for attempting that stroke, because the opposition came together in a quite united way and didn't allow them to get away with it.
You're not the only one to brand this or accuse the government of committing stroke politics. Last week, though, Michael Lowry was described to me by one of the TD as a bit of a kingpin. Does that seem to be the case? And I've had people on the streets today doing vox pops asking me who is calling the shots.
Yes, I think Michael Lowry has been described as the kingmaker of the programme for government. He was the man who apparently engineered the deal whereby Verona Murphy became the Ceann Comhairle. She certainly thanked him for his role in that, and then was obviously central to the negotiations for the programme for government. I think an important question now is, what other deals are there that are not written down in the programme for government? So, for example, there's no reference in the programme for government about this farcical situation of Lowry sitting in the opposition, taking opposition time while being a backbench government TD. But I don't really believe that this was something that only existed in Michael Lowry's head or in the Ceann Comhairle's head. I believe that the government had agreed to it. Similarly, there's no mention of various constituency deals in the programme for government, but these TDs, like Michael Lowry, like Barry Heenan, are going around saying that they have deals for various things in their constituencies, and those deals need to be published, and they need to be accountable for those deals, as opposed to being secret deals that are hidden from the Dáil and the public.
Obviously, I was going to ask you then about those backroom deals, but you pretty much answered that. But on Verona Murphy, how did she perform yesterday?
I think, look, it was her first real day, her first full day as Ceann Comhairle. It was always going to be very challenging. There is clearly a problem of perception, given that she comes from Michael Lowry's group. Michael Lowry was key in her elevation to being a Ceann Comhairle. I think she could have handled it better in terms of facilitating more of a discussion and so on. If she had come to, she's now made two provisional rulings on the status of the Lowry group. The first ruling was to say they are allowed to sit in the opposition, and now this morning she's made a new ruling saying they're not allowed to sit in the opposition. If she'd made that second ruling initially, we wouldn't be probably where we are today. But that is it. Let's see how today goes and see if we can. It seems that there is agreement to get the Dáil underway with a commitment that they will not be allowed to sit on the opposition benches.
I was going to ask you about those meetings that are happening today. If you've heard anything concrete. So far we're being told constructive meetings.
Yes, as I understand it, effectively Simon Harris and Neil Martin have said that they were not aware that Michael Lowry group was going to try and sit in the opposition benches. They hadn't done a deal for that. That didn't come from them. Personally, I'm a little bit sceptical that they knew nothing about it, but that's their line. And on paper, they agree with the principle that if you're in opposition, if you're a government backbench TD, even an independent, you should be sitting in the government benches, taking government speaking time, not opposition time. There is agreement that there will be effectively a declaration to that effect from Martin or Harris on behalf of the government, and then there would be work to write wording to put in the standing orders to make that absolutely crystal clear. I guess the only kind of devil in the detail is they will say, well, they want to make sure that such wording wouldn't capture a situation where, of course, you can be an opposition TD and vote with the government from time to time. That's fine. We accept that should not be captured by that, but where you've written the programme for government, where you're committed to vote for them all the way, clearly you should be. So the outlines of the agreement is the Ceann Comhairle has ruled that the Lowry group will not get opposition speaking time today. That's welcome. We'll get a political declaration saying that they shouldn't get time in future effectively, and then the Dáil Reform Committee will be set up to work on a wording. So that's all the different pieces in place, and hopefully that goes through.
And finally, one, will we have a Taoiseach today, and two, are you going to continue to be as vocal as you have been always on the opposition benches during the next term?
I think it's certainly most likely that we will have a Taoiseach today. And then, yes, I intend to be just as vocal as I was yesterday, but hopefully not just dealing with issues of opposition speaking time and this political stroke and so on, but instead getting to the heart of the matters, which is fundamentally which interest does this government represent? Are they going to allow, like the last government allowed, the housing crisis to deepen, to worsen, to allow this massive transfer of wealth from people who have no property to people who have property portfolios, to deal with the issue of the massive waiting lists for children with additional needs, the issue of school places, the issue of the deepening health crisis driving people into the arms of the private health providers and insurers. I think, you know, it was a good thing that the opposition was united yesterday in the Dáil. We need to continue that on the other issues, and we would say we need to also see that on the streets. We need to build a massive protest movement on the issue of the housing crisis, like we saw on the water charges, for example.